Hi, everybody, and welcome to... I'll let you say it.
It's 2 gays, 1 episode.
Yeah, it's a Michael title, that's for sure. And I'm Alex.
And I'm GoatJesus. Oh, wait. Are we going by monikers or should
I don't know. My moniker is Alex
Whatever,
Fab, so either way, I'm good.
Yeah. I'll go by GoatJesus.
No one will ever know your real name.
I'm the Ava guy.
Or the FMA guy. Or the
FMA guy. Yeah,
Are you really known for anything else?
Those two.
Just made
Not
like
really. 10
videos on Evangelion and FMA.
I've seen so much anime and nothing that I'm passionate about aside from those. So
that's fair enough.
Well, I like them. It's just very passively.
Yes. You wouldn't make a 45-minute video about them with a eye-catching title like "Sex, Drugs, Religion is Dead." Nietzsche loved Full Metal Alchemist.
God is dead in Full Metal Alchemist. Yeah.
Nietzsche is the main character of Full Metal Alchemist with like a weird picture of like Nietzsche's face over Edward Elric.
How FMA Brotherhood is pro-fascist. Okay, anyway.
We don't actually think that, just to be clear. We don't think FMA Brotherhood is pro-fascist. I haven't actually thought about it. Maybe it is. I haven't thought about that.
They don't really dismantle that military state. Just
Anyway, the premise of our podcast, just to get back on topic, is we're two gays and we watch one episode of an anime and then we talk about it. And we like to talk, so these could probably get kind of long. But if you like that sort of thing, you might like what we have to say.
Yeah. So we're going to be first talking about Neon Genesis Evangelion episode 1, which is the pilot Angel Attack. And the pilot is technically in 2 parts, episode 1 and 2. They aired together originally. And I think that's probably for the best. Usually I really enjoy like 2-parter, like hour-long special sort of pilot kind of deal. Here in the West, we go ridiculous with our overtly long pilots. If you've ever seen the Twin Peaks pilot, that thing is like 2.5 hours long or something.
Yeah, Battlestar Galactica's pilot is a movie. It's a 5-part movie.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Usually pilots begin kind of long as like a... hey, we have double the time to invest people in the show kind of deal. So Ava decides to take that approach, which is sort of rare in anime. Speaking of FMA, like FMA, the original one was a 2-parter when it opened as well. So,
and the plot didn't even start until episode 3, which was odd, but anyway. Not an FMA episode review this week. We're doing Evangelion. We're not going to get off topic.
Yeah, the important part of a pilot is to sort of introduce your core cast. And obviously in Evangelion's case, the key significant cast member that is not introduced is Asuka. But I think that it's good because this pilot kind of introduces Rei, Misato, Ritsuko, Gendo, Shinji, and it just has like a lot of mainstays that are going to be important throughout the show. And Asuka's dynamic, it really shakes up the core cast as it is. The first part of the show, because I kind of see the series kind of structured in a very similar way to the like Aristotelian like 4-act structure.
Care to elaborate?
It's yes. So Aristotle
Michael finished college. I didn't.
Aristotle in his manuscript called Poetics actually talked about how stories are structured with 4 acts. Which is essentially present a problem, escalate the problem, create a crisis for the problem, and resolve the problem. And it's sort of the basic foundations for all story structure, including the 3-act structure or the 2-act structure of plays. When Aristotle was talking about 4 acts, he was referring to it in the framework of 2-act plays. And in that case, it would be like present a problem, escalate the problem are 1 act, and then so it's like sort of 2 acts in 1, and then crisis and resolution would be the 2nd act of a play. In a movie, you would take the acts 2 and 3 and combine those, and then so like act 1 would just be present a problem, and then act 3 would just be resolve the problem. And in the case of Evangelion, it's pretty perfectly divided into approximately 7 episode chunks that we have like specific beats of the series. So like episodes 1 through 7 are very kind of like dark, dour, serious. Shinji is alone, and it's presenting the problem of like Shinji has no support unit essentially. And then in the second sequence of the show, which is when Asuka gets introduced, 8 through around 14, 15, I'd say 15's the ending of that, is like when we kind of he gets a support unit, things are stabilizing, but his relationships are kind of like being like sort of put to task
it's really
by
16 through
the
19,
introduction
I
of
think.
Asuka. It's really interesting. But what I'm saying is that like, and then we kind of have like the downfall where Shinji like kind of loses his support unit, and then the resolution is the end of the series. So like EOE pretty much, or EOTV. It's kind of like a shorter kind of resolution, but I think it follows the same type of pattern or beats that you'd expect from like from a kind of like filmic kind of structure, but it sort of plays itself out in a longer kind of way.
It's like a religious text almost.
Yeah, well, actually, it's sort of funny that you mentioned that because, even though Aristotle had absolutely no biblical influence, there are strange parallels between the Bible's overall kind of foundational structure, the death and resurrection, and to the 4 acts that we talk about, like sort of the Jesus myth. The world was created, everyone was confused, things are in chaos. And then like Jesus comes, and then there's like, there's the crisis of like the death of Jesus, and then the resurrection is kind of the resolution.
Oh my gosh.
It's that like downfall and then rise again, and which is very much in Eva as well. So
that's really cool. I never even thought about that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'd say Evangelion, much like Harry Potter and a lot of these. Okay, so Kurt Vonnegut talked about like story shapes, and in regards to playing into the biblical myth, and like Harry Potter and Cinderella and all these kinds of like classic stories that really resonate with us are very parallel to the death and resurrection, like structurally. And Eva is super like that. FMA is super like that. Like a lot of these like young boy heroes who lose everything and then like sacrifice their own like happiness, quote unquote, for the greater good is like just a key essential part of the foundation of like narrative in general. And so it shows up all the time in all kinds of stories, east and west.
Interesting. You kind of make the case that Evangelion is about Shinji needing to recognize that he doesn't have to give himself up for other people, but that he doesn't have to give himself up, and he can be happy too. Almost.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that it's ultimately like in the structural kind of foundation of it, it sort of becomes about Shinji being like, what did I want more than anything, which was a world without pain. And so it's like he's giving that up for himself, but also everyone else to be able to experience true happiness as well. So it's kind of there's a sacrificial actualization in respect to that. Oh my god, I'm so academic, and we're already talking.
I was gonna say, there you go, guys. That's the podcast. Yeah. We just covered the whole series, and it's all done, and we don't even talk about anything else.
So let's go. We have the macro out of the way. Let's go into the micro and just talk about what's specifically set up.
What I wanted to do was recap it a little bit first, just to go through the episode kind of sequence.
Sure.
By sequence. So we have the opening. The Japanese lyrics to the opening. Are you going to sing it for us?
Oh, okay. No.
Eventually, maybe. Maybe we will work on this.
I mean, I have the whole thing memorized. I mean, but yeah. I wouldn't do that. That's like a weeby thing to do.
Okay.
So
maybe eventually though.
That'd be very.
Maybe eventually though. Keep watching. That's my little selling point. Like every week, maybe Michael will sing the Evangelion theme in Japanese. Just maybe. Keep listening.
Yeah. Maybe.
We've got to keep this going, Michael. Work with me here. All right, so pretty much the opening shot of Evangelion, they don't waste any time. There's no opening narration. There's kind of an opening narration, but it's really just incidental dialogue by a unseen announcer warning people about what to do, which I think is a much more common thing in Japan. You don't really have someone on like a megaphone just shouting at people like, "Hey, you got to get to the shelters." Like no one does that. You just go and you don't know what's going on. But that's almost kind of our opening narration, that there's big trouble, the city's abandoned, and it's under attack by a big monster.
The very first thing we see is the year is like 2015.
Oh,
so
true.
We establish kind of the fact that it's in the future, and it's got a title card that says that with its iconic, black and white text. Like Ava loves to have this kind of like unorthodox sort of boom, black and white, like right here on the screen is text and it just says something. Yeah, it's a very stylistic decision. That's not something that you typically see in a lot of anime, like at all. It's a unique choice to have such like bold text and like cutting away. But Ava's style is very cutty in general, like where it's just rapid fire, very 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 fast paced. Like here you go, a lot of information in a short amount of time. So, and then the shot we get after that is rushing water. And it sort of feels like we're either from the angel's point of view, like seeing kind of like, maybe they're swimming above the surface or something at rapid pace, or it's a helicopter that's like flying over the water trying to track the angel. But then we got like shots of the angel after that. And that's his kind of opening hook, is like, what is this thing? Like, what the heck is this? And it's a cool hook. It gives you a hook. It's just like this monster and the world is flooded and you can see the buildings just like underwater. It's like, what happened in 2015? This was made 20 years before 2015.
Yeah. This is ancient history now. These are the historical texts.
Yeah. But it's speculative, right? It's like, whoa, is global warming real, you guys? Oh my god!
None of this happened because of global warming, though. In context, none of it happened because of global warming.
No,
it happened because of an alien invasion by giant, mammoth, godlike creatures. But one thing, though, is Sakiel. That's the name of the angel. I know all the angel names. Do not mess with me. I know all. I think I could name all of them off the top of my head right now. Is the angel of water. So almost that water angel connection there, just to establish his character. Because otherwise he's not really the angel of water in any other way. But that's what he's named after.
Yeah, he is actually associated with water, but he's also associated with like children and like cherubim, which I think is like really interesting because obviously there are some special children in this show that we will be following as the heroes. So it's kind of it's sort of almost like he's a guardian in a bizarre twisted. It's taking that kind of like guardian of kids kind of thing and subverting it, warping it, turning it into something evil, which I think is like really cool, but it's still ushering in our characters, our kid leads, which I think is clever. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe this is all a coincidence. I don't know. The water association makes me doubt a little bit that it is, but
No, I don't think so, because if you look at all the angels and what they're named after, they all make sense.
Yeah, they clearly did some research. Okay, there's some mythology around like Gynex didn't know what they were doing with the religious stuff and whatnot, but that's a misquote. Like Anno, the creator of Evangelion, was quoted saying that the title Neon Genesis Evangelion wasn't really meaningful. Like it was just, Evangelion sounds cool. And then people ran with that and said every religious aspect of the show is like phony. But they clearly did their research. There's like obvious parallels in some ways, and I think that this one is a pretty accurate one. They did their research. They're like, which angel are we going to have first? Let's look for one associated with water, and then maybe like a little bit more into it, and then you have that whole so
absolutely. Yeah, and then one of the next shots, I don't know if it's the very next shot, but is the one of Rei, which is one of the biggest like Chekhov's angel child
you get
in any show I've ever
you
seen.
get some more establishing shots of just the world, and the world in decay, the tanks by the ocean, etc., which is a very iconic shot. And then you get like the Rei shot after Shinji's at the phone booth, which the phone booth is like a reoccurring image throughout the rest of the series. It's gonna be like characters on the phone or by the phone, and it's a symbol for like communication in general and kind of like establishing connections with people, etc. So
They're always super old school phones with like wires. Like no one's used a phone like this since like the like 92 or something like that. No one has a cell phone.
yeah, that's the thing. Even in 95, it was pretty obvious that like landlines were going to be phased out pretty much with cell phones. I mean, there are like nods to cell phones being used in Neon Genesis. Misato in this episode uses a telephone in the car. If you remember that was like a thing where
yes, of course.
they had portable phones like that. And I believe there any cell phones in the rest of the series. I can't actually remember. But
typically they're on the phone in like a control center or something, and they're picking it up and going, hey, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, landlines were going to be phased out, and that's like kind of like a really basic thing that you could have picked up in a sci-fi setting, but they deliberately decided to use the landlines. And in later entries in the franchise made decades later, they still have landlines, so it's like obviously intentional, obviously important to them. Instead of
it makes everything feel like they're kind of at a disadvantage. It makes everything feel kind of rough, because even the Evangelions are kind of they don't fly around with like magic wings. They're not firing laser beams. They have like knives, and it's all very visceral. It's all very destructive.
Yeah,
and it's kind of primitive almost in a way.
How do you? I mean, like, okay, so returning to the sort of Rei topic. Like, do you think that it was intentional that we're planting something for, the end of the series with Rei versus...
That's what I was going to ask. That's why I brought it up. Is how much do you think he knew when he made that moment? Like, did he know all the lore? Because if you read the actual scripts of each episode, the lore changed a lot from the first draft of all those. I don't have full insight on this. I haven't read all of them, but I've read some of the later ones. If you look at them, what the lore as they're talking about it in early drafts is very different than what it ended up being in the show. And he obviously changed his mind as he was producing those last couple of episodes. I don't know if he knew the specifics. I don't think he knew the specifics. I think he knew Rei was special, and I think he knew he wanted to do something with it.
There's obviously kind of like I know this is mystical, and we'll see what we can do later. Because honestly, a lot of great writing is plants with payoffs where you know that you're going to pay it off, you just don't know how yet. That happens like a lot, actually, especially in television production, because TV production is usually by the seat of your pants. You're creating as you're going. I had a professor describe it to me as like building a railroad in real time. Like the train is going, and like you got to make the track for it, and you're just like rushing to get the tracks and in place. And good writers have the skill to like run with that, to like be very loose. There is a series Bible that often is I'm sure there was that with this as well, where it's like
you need a good I think you need a good framework to fall back on when you make a mistake, or you're like, okay, I gotta fall back.
There's like an internal consistency, probably like a lore that they set up originally. Like maybe it changed because of decisions they wanted to do later on, but there was absolutely like a plan, and then the plan changes. That's usually how it goes. So like, famously in Breaking Bad, Jesse Pinkman was supposed to die in season 1, but then they were like, oh, we clearly see that he has great chemistry with the protagonist of that show, so we're going to keep him alive. And that's what they do in TV a lot of the time, is that they make huge decisions that affect the entire story based off of what is working and what isn't working, depending on what they have done. So as Neon Genesis was being made, Anno probably saw like, oh, I like the mystery elements of it. Like, I don't want it to be explained like completely, like that sort of thing where, we want to keep that ethereal atmosphere. Some things maybe in the storyboards or the visual department, like inspired that perhaps. And maybe one of the things is Rei over here being kind of just like, ooh, I'm teleporting. Why am I doing that? This is very mysterious. And then And then that maybe inspired like Quantum Ray later down the road, or like, you know, Giga Huge Ray. So it's
he must have known, because episode 6 is called Ray 2.
Yeah.
So he must have known there was a Ray, at least that there was a Ray 1 at some point. So he knew that aspect of that character at least.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there an episode called like Ray 1 at all in the show? I don't think so. Every episode has 2 titles, and I only usually remember the one. So
some of them are long. Like, it's weird that this is called Angel Attack when like there's an episode called Those Women Who Long for the Touch of Others and Thus Invited Their Kisses. It's like, whoa.
I think even this first episode has a secondary title in it. I'm just trying to remember what it is. So but what's really cool as well,
Ray 1's only in a flashback episode anyway.
What's really cool as well is like, I just wanted to talk about this because this is especially the case in the pilot, but objects have history in Eva. So before we're even introduced to Shinji, we see Misato in the car. Like, she's driving, she's gonna get to Shinji. She's you know, rolling down at the speed of sound or whatever. I don't know. And Shinji has a photo of Misato. And the photo has like these doodles on it, and it's just like, "Hey Shinji, check these out. Like what you see, like kissy kissy goo goo." And then she has like lipstick mark on the photograph, and it's like, she wrote this, and why did she write it? It's kind of, it's giving an No, this is important. It's giving it.
No, I agree.
It's giving an insight.
I was going to say trigger warning, pedophilia, but anyway. Go on.
Oh,
Sorry.
right. Yeah. I mean, this is an older woman who is making a sexual advances to a 14-year-old child.
It was 2015. It was a long time ago. It was a different time.
I mean, back then we used to say nice about this sort of thing, but now, yeah. Anyway,
go on.
So, but it's giving an insight into the character, how she uses sex as like a way of essentially being able to control someone. She wants him to stay there and wait for the rendezvous, and she's using her sex appeal as like kind of like a, come here, you know, let me pick you up, like, do what I tell you to do, motherfucker. So it's
and I mean, she's not a floozy either, which is good. She's smart, and she's she has her own arc, really, as the show goes. Everyone has their own arc. Everyone. The techie, the Q, the James Bond Q-esque character. Yeah. She has an arc. She has a great arc. She maybe has the best arc in the whole show.
What's really cool as well is that objects have history, and I think this is something that any creator could learn from, is like the part where Misato is just like, "Hey Shinji, do you have that like invite from your dad?" And he pulls out this like invitation to Nerve, and like almost everything in it is scribbled out with like this black marker, like very deliberately. And it's like Gendo did that to be like, you don't need to know any of this. Like, you don't need to know any of this. You just need to know that you're invited. And then Shinji tore it up, and he got mad, and he tore it up when he saw it, and then taped it back together. And like, you can see the tape, like,
oh my gosh.
It's objects have history in Evangelion, and it's like very it's very cool how like an entire like character can be expressed, and like the core dynamic between Gendo and Shinji is already being like laid out for you before you're even introduced to that, like them in the same room, which I think is,
you may not have noticed
but your brain did. I think it's just really like the attention to detail is one thing that is just a mainstay in Eva. It's part of why Eva has been as long lasting. Its legacy is so impactful, is because of shit like that, where you can rewatch. Are we allowed to swear?
I was avoiding it, but go ahead.
No, I'll try to avoid it. It's fine. But yeah,
they swear in the show, I'm pretty sure. So Amanda and Lee loves her swear words, so she threw as many as she could in End of Evangelion, which, no disrespect.
We're not supposed to talk about it. Okay. Coming back to the pilot. So
yes, coming back to the pilot.
So after we're pretty much like introduced to Misato, and she like rides off with Shinji, we get some charming kind of comedy from her perspective as well. Eva is a pretty dark show. At times, probably one of the darkest for a teenage male audience I've ever seen. But there is levity, and I think comedy is really integral to creating something that has mass appeal. No matter how dark you get, there should be like light moments. And Misato thinking about like, oh, this car's a rental, oh my god, it's already broken, like that sort of stuff. And then Shinji being like, hey girl, can you even drive? And she's like, what do you mean? And she just starts swerving like on the road. That's all really like it's tonally you need that for something as like dour as how this show gets later. And especially early on, it's good to do because we can't do it anymore later on. We have to be like locked into that tone.
It also sets up that these characters aren't stiffs, that they have a sense of humor. Like sometimes you'll almost find, like, even in a comedy, all the characters are straight, but you're just laughing at what they're doing. But in this show, they kind of smile, they kind of laugh at each other, they make observations about it. It gives them more realistic relationships, I think, and personality comedies.
Yeah. Yep. And then you have Gendo in the military, and kind of the core conflict that Nerve is going to have throughout a lot of the series is like, they don't want the military involvement, but the military wants to be involved, and why do we need Ava? And that kind of question is like really important. As much as people crap on Jet Alone, and we'll get to that at some point, Jet Alone is a pretty good episode in terms of just like giving the characters that we don't see get to doing a lot, and establishing, like, clenching why is Ava important, and episode 1 kind of sets that up, and a preview into that, where it's like the military is here, they're trying to take control with N2 mines, and but it's not working, it doesn't work, so now we need an alternative, and
conventional methods are useless.
Yeah, and that's where we kind of usher in the idea of little kid gotta get in a big robot. So
exactly. It's
yeah, go on.
It's on the tip of my head. I just had it, and now it's gone. Oh well. But I was gonna say about the military. It's also just a staple of any monster show in Japan. You always have the ineffective military sitting around. It's in Shin Godzilla. It's in any Godzilla movie, really. Just the military sitting around a conference table talking about, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? There's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
To set up,
the original 50s Godzilla had stuff like that for sure. So, which is a great movie, by the way. I do like that one.
Yes.
Yes.
Are we going to talk about Godzilla now?
Yeah, they actually do create like a oxygen bomb at the end of that movie to kill Godzilla, which is maybe that's where N2 mines kind of come from. It's that idea. So who knows? But
who knows?
Because like, I don't remember seeing a lot of bombs necessarily being used in the same way in in Gundam they had explosives, but not like proper nukes, like not nuking a place. Well, as far as I can remember, I'm sure some Gundam fan is just gonna be like, GoatJesus, you're wrong.
Have you watched Gundam?
I have. I've seen Mobile Suit. Yeah.
Oh wow, I've never seen any Gundam.
People love to say it's like, oh, they love to make a lot of comparisons, and it's not like Gundam wasn't sophisticated for its time, but basically the main character, he's this little boy whose dad made a giant robot, and the little boy goes in and he's just like, I have PTSD and the horrors of war, and it's like, but he gets over it. It's sort of weirdly executed in like a lot of ways, and that's the extent of it. It's just like, war is evil, and it kind of it feels almost Miyazaki-esque in some ways, with its like anti-war sentiment that is very just like in your face about it. Ava takes that same concept and basically runs with it in a totally psychological way. Like, how would this affect this person in a grounded setting? Because like Amuro, the main character of Gundam, he's like not in a grounded setting at all. It's all military all the time. There's no like school foundation to any of it. There's no like him living as a kid and functioning in the world. And there's no like relationship between him and his father that is really like the highlight or the emphasis, like an abusive father. But Amuro definitely has like, ooh, I'm very traumatized by killing people. Like that's basically his big thing. So there is like a lean in the direction of the psychology of the character, but it doesn't embrace it like Eva does, where yeah.
Right.
So
and I mean, there's a lot of talk of Evangelion being a deconstruction, which I don't know if anyone's ever really pinned down what that. I mean, deconstruction just means you break something down. That's all it means.
yeah.
And we've kind of taken that term and applied it and said any show that it seems to be any show that says, but what would be the real world consequence of a boy and a robot fighting evil monsters? What would the real world consequences be of a show about police officers or anything like that? It's just when you bring the real world into it, that's what people use as deconstruction. I'm not sure where that connection came from, but that seems to be the case.
Yeah, like a deconstruction is basically taking something to a logical conclusion in a lot of ways, where it's like, okay, well, you have Looney Tunes, right? And they keep like throwing I don't know, safes on top of people. A deconstruction would be like, oh, well, a safe drops on someone in a cartoon and then they're dead. Like that sort of thing.
Yeah, kind of. It's almost like Itchy and Scratchy is a deconstruction of Looney Tunes. We're gonna get back to Evangelion in a second, but just to establish the terms we're using.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost like Itchy and Scratchy is
not the same thing as a subversion. A subversion is just where you take something like an expectation of how a trope or cliche would go, and you change it in a way that freshens it up or makes it like different. So, which Eva has both deconstructive elements of the genre of mecha as well as subversive elements. So like an example of a subversion would be that the mecha here are not mecha at all. They're organic life forms, which is sort of hinted at in the end of the pilot. Well, it's hinted at, but yeah.
It's very strongly hinted at. You miss it though. You blink and you miss it.
It's and that kind of element gives those cliches where it's a giant robot, but it's actually not, and it basically adds a level of intrigue and allows for cosmic horror that would not otherwise be as like authentic. So I think if you try to do some crazy cosmic horror stuff and the robots were just robots made out of machines, it wouldn't feel nearly as like otherworldly, because machines are so man-made. Like everything about it is just man, so we understand it completely. And part of like Lovecraft is like fear of the unknown, so organic life forms that we grew somehow feels a lot more Cthulhian and Lovecraftian than it would be if it was just typical mecha. Another cool part, like Evangelion has a lot of, so Evangelion, its core conceit was basically, it was thought up when the creator Hideaki Anno said, I want to make a mecha show where the robot goes berserk, and it's basically you can't control the robot. That was the initial kind of kernel, the seed that sort of inspired the show to get made in the first place. And they have that being built into episode 1 with Eva Unit 1 coming to life and on its own will protecting Shinji from a rafter that's going to fall on him.
Which they will call back to over and over.
Yes,
and over again.
the Eva unit going berserk and taking control is super significant in the rest of the series, and it's good that they introduce it even in the first half of the two-parter pilot in episode 1. So it's good that it's just being planted in as early as possible, essentially.
There's a lot of seeds here.
Yeah.
And Rei's injuries, we find out later why she's injured, why that was important. And you kind of forget about it. You forget that Rei was injured the first time you saw her. It just because it's such an incidental, essential plot point. We just need Rei out of the way. She's a senior pilot, but she's just not able to do it this time. So Shinji has to do it. And you kind of forget about it, but it's important. And that's
Shinji! You must do it.
What is that? Our old animations, our old Evangelion animations, where I played Masato. Is that what you're doing?
Well, I wasn't.
We'll reveal more information about those.
I
later.
wasn't aiming for that exactly, but I guess it.
It was very similar.
Yeah. I think subtextually that's probably where it came from.
Those got dubbed. Michael, Spanish people dubbed those cartoons, okay?
There was a Russian dub too, by the way. I've seen that one.
There was.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yep.
Oh my god.
They got fan dubbed.
I've been dubbed into Russian.
Yeah, you have. We've been contributing to the Ava fandom for many years now, and
many years now.
Yes.
Since I met you, the first thing we did was watch this whole show in 3 nights. So
was it the first thing?
Pretty much. I think we met, we talked a bit, and then like the second or third time we really talked, you're like, hey, have you heard of Evangelion? I'm like, I've never seen it. And you're like, what? And then you showed me the whole thing in 2 nights. And then we watched the movie a third night.
You know, to this day, with the exception of maybe the first half of the recap episode and Magma Diver, I would say that this is still probably one of the most perfect shows I've ever seen. Because, like, no episode is unimportant,
consistent,
or bad.
Sure.
Yeah, it's really... I mean, people are reaching when they say Jet Alone is bad, because I just rewatched the series and it's still good. Magma Diver is the only one that I don't really enjoy, and that's like, but it still has important things in it. You can't skip it.
It's just kind of trashy. Really, is the only flaw of it. Is just a trashy episode.
Pretty much.
It's a comedy episode, really, is what it is.
But it's very crude.
We'll probably
it's
cover
very
that
crude. Yeah, we'll discuss it later. But
crude.
it's a show that can easily be watched and recommended. I feel like a lot of people who dislike it, it's less about what it is doing that's wrong and more about how, like, your personal preference for what you enjoy in a series or not. Which is a good sign when you can point to things and it's like all the characters are consistent and the tone is really good, and they
all have arcs.
Yeah, everybody has arc. They're all
thing.
related arcs too, because they're all variations of the internal versus external like kind of arc, where it's like characters, what they want is praise and validation from others, and what they need is to love themselves and self-love and internal validation. And that's their true path to happiness, but it's so much more enticing to get the praise and the validation from others. Like Shinji seeks that through his father and being an Eva pilot in general. Asuka seeks that through sexualizing herself, which I guess we'll discuss later. Basically,
when Asuka's in the show.
Yeah, and Rei does it through Gendo as well. Like, her validation is to be like, I'm useful. I am a tool to this person. And Misato's is through probably Kaji, her relationship with him, and the validation of her father, like, who is essentially gone. Like, her father is gone. She has father issues that are unresolved and is seeking to resolve them through another character. So it's all variations of...
And it's apparent immediately. It's in this episode.
It's in the pilot. Yeah.
Yeah. It's immediate.
Even
Shinji,
Misato says, like, he's just like me because I have daddy issues too. She's already building in with those foundations. It's like... There's a very familiar... It's about family, and that's what makes it so... That's what makes it so...
family.
That's what makes it so powerful. Right.
The families we create. That's not what Evangelion's about. It's about family. It's about relationships. It's not really about family.
It's specifically about relationships. It's about men and women and kind of their...
Men and women, and what is a man and what is a woman. I think that is a big element of it. It's never... said, they don't vocalize it, but it's very much about Shinji's need for manhood is definitely a recurring theme throughout the show, and it's very apparent in this pilot. That he has to get...
What do you know about men and women anyway? You're gay or whatever. Well, let me tell you something.
What?
Uh,
What? Is that a commentator?
yeah,
Are
yeah.
you? Oh, okay.
I'm two gays, one episode. I can see
You're...
us being poor choice to be a commentary on the relationships between men and women. But I will say, just because
I mean, I know women. I've talked to
yeah,
women
I was gonna bring it up. I'm just like, just because we gay doesn't mean we don't have some ladies in our life, so. And
they like to spill the tea, honey. Anyway.
I know more about women than you do, Mr. Heterosexual. No, just saying.
Mr. Hypothetical heterosexual commentator who's hazing us in our own brains. How dare you?
Exactly.
How dare you leave such a comment?
Exactly. Exactly. And so I really appreciate that it takes those kind of that binary, and it does sort of inject like queer elements into it, and questioning elements and all that sort of stuff into, this. Oh, am I actually attracted to women? Oh, am I actually a male? Like, that seems to be at least subtextually, like, a lot of what's going on behind the scenes with someone like Shinji. So
it's a lot about identity.
Yeah, it's a lot about questioning identity and trying to figure out who you are. A lot of confusion in your teenage years, and it's captured really authentically, and it has a legacy in later on with other Studio Gainax series as well, like Fooly Cooly and such.
Yeah.
So, Furikuri.
Yeah. Furikuri. I was gonna say, okay, so that's pretty much the whole plot of the episode we just covered.
Yeah, I think
more or less the whole thing.
That's episode 1. Unless you want to talk about some stuff that happens in episode 2 here, or save that for.
Well, I thought we could go a little deeper on some of the stuff. I do have a list of questions just to keep us on topic.
Okay.
So do you think this is? I think we've kind of answered this question. Do you think this is a good pilot?
Okay, so I feel like it is a good pilot if you watch like episodes 1 and 2 together. If you just saw episode 1 alone, I don't think that's enough. Like, it has to have that part 1 and part 2 kind of connecting thing. Because like, part of what is really excellent about Eva as well is that it balances deep character drama with exciting action. And it's one of those series that doesn't compromise. It has both a rich cast of characters and really excellent choreography and spectacle. And episode 1 gives less spectacle than 2. And so it's important to kind of watch them back to back, because then you get the excellent action and animation and the promise for more of that later.
Yes.
So it completes it if you watch them both.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Both halves. I think if you
I agree.
if you just saw episode 1 and you're, you didn't have a friend going like, you need to watch 2. I could see someone, kind of maybe being like, oh, that was interesting, and then dropping it or something. So, but
yeah,
after you see 2, I think you're hooked, which is nice.
I think as far as hooking the viewer, I think the pilot is really good because it is so breakneck. And you just move from plot element to plot element to plot element. And every element is interesting. And every element is, I think, fresh. And still feels fresh, honestly. I think a lot of stuff has tried to mimic Evangelion and hasn't really succeeded at being novel as Evangelion.
I also have to praise it for doing... It doesn't have a whole lot of exposition. It could have gone really overboard with introducing a lot of the elements in the show in a dialogue driven way, but it doesn't do that. It's a lot of visual exposition, like, oh, the city's underwater.
Objects have history,
like
you said.
Yeah, it's like the city's underwater. Oh, like, we don't get to just hear about Nerve. We get to see it. We get to see this underground city. Oh, like the Ava unit itself and how it can come to life, and it kind of like can go berserk. That's just all demonstrated. It's all like everything in the show is, it doesn't hold your hand about its larger world. No. It just kind of shows it. It's just here. And
or even basic staging stuff like, I'm sorry, Michael.
No, go on.
I was gonna say even basic staging stuff like Gendo up in his like carrier room and he's just looking down on Shinji. That tells you about their relationship in a
visual
really visceral
hierarchy.
way. And then you have Masato and Ritsuko standing off to the side near Shinji to show you they're his allies. Gendo is his adversary, and those are his allies.
Yeah, I'd say Gendo is also probably the closest thing to a main antagonist that the series really has for Shinji, because
Mhm.
you know, Shinji wants his validation and Gendo is not giving it to him. And so while, you know, Gendo's motivations are sort of dark and sinister, at the same time, he's not like a traditional villain in the sense of like he wants to overtly hurt or cause harm to Shinji. They're on the same team ultimately. They're allies, whether they like it or not, sort of deal. But it's he's still not giving him love and affection, which is what Shinji really wants from the situation.
Yeah. And the more you find out about them, the more you find out they really do want to be close together.
Yeah.
But they can't be. What's some other stuff? So what about we want to talk about the character designs, of course. The character designs are, I think, really impressive because the Shinji design, he's just dressed up like a 14-year-old salary man. Japanese salary man, really. He's wearing like a white shirt and blue pants.
That's a typical school uniform over there. It's like a very, well, not really, actually. The typical school uniform is like that black pinup kind of shirt. If like, it's almost like a jacket sort of deal, if you can imagine it.
With the white lining.
Yeah, like actually the white t-shirt and pants is more of a private school United States kind of, or like a Catholic school sort of thing. Maybe that's
there was an Armageddon. They don't have a lot of cloth and material. They had to cut corners. Okay?
Yeah, well, but yeah, exactly. No fancy black jackets to you. They're all going to the Nerve employees. So
they wear khaki.
But yeah, Shinji is an everyman. He's designed to basically be the self-insert for the target audience of the show, in a lot of ways. I mean, not to say that he is a self-insert. He has his own, character, history, drama, background, but he's made to look average and like an average Japanese boy specifically. And I think that they did a really good job kind of capturing that plainness, but in a still iconic kind of way. And that's like thanks to Yoshiyuki Sadamoto's character designs. He has a very distinctive kind of style, I feel, with like a lot of his character designs. I can always pick out when I see him. I recently watched Wolf Children from Mamoru Hosoda, and I was like, oh, that's Sadamoto's character designs, and sure enough, it is. So it's kind of it's always, you can always sort of tell when it's him. He really likes unique women, especially like designing you really, really unique and out there kind of women characters. If you've ever seen like Nadia's Secret of Blue Water, which was Anno's previous collaboration with Yoshiyuki Sadamoto, Nadia herself is a very unusual looking protagonist, female protagonist for an anime. She's like brown skin, like really, really kind of like short, clean cut hair. The outfit is very like sort of like alien looking. It's very interesting, and I think that reflects as well with Rei and her character design when showed here. It's like the white-haired red eye would become a sort of iconic look and very mimicked in anime to come after this, but at the time it was like, who is that? Nothing's like that has really been seen before, in a
albino bunny,
an albino kind of character. Yeah. I think Masato is iconic. Ritsuko is iconic. Ritsuko was designed to be made to be the hot one. Did you?
Was she?
Yeah,
she's so plain.
Did you know?
She's got stilettos on and she's got the tights. I didn't know.
Yeah,
that.
She was designed to be like the
the
Marilyn Monroe kind of like.
Is that what she does?
Yeah. It was sort of. It was. She was designed as the character that would have the highest sex appeal, and then it was like everyone went, oh, Masato, she's true MILF.
No, we like teenage girls. Anyway.
And the teenage girl. Yeah. So there are problematic aspects to Evangelion's reception. Not necessarily completely discouraged by the show itself, unfortunately.
No,
Uh,
no, not really.
but we'll get into that at another time for sure.
Yeah, when more appropriate episode. There's a lot of episodes where we can talk about the take on women or how it portrays women, which I think is overall positive, but we will get to that.
Yes.
And largely due to Akio Satsukawa. But Akio Satsukawa didn't write this episode. I love Akio Satsukawa, but he didn't write this episode.
Do you know?
This episode was written by Ano.
Okay, so Ano specifically was the sole writer on this one.
He was the sole writer on this one. He actually has a writing credit on every episode except one. And the way I think it worked was the writer would do a first draft, and then Anna would take it and fiddle with it a little bit, and he would write his own draft based on their draft, and that's why he has a writing credit on every episode. That's what I'm starting to figure out.
I'm pretty sure that's exactly right, but that's also exactly what showrunners do in Western television. So in Western television, they have a writing staff of people, and they all discuss the show in a writer's room. And they go, okay, this is what's going to happen this season. This is the structure of the season. Here's the structure of all the episodes. Like, here's what will happen in each one. And they all discuss it collaboratively. And then the showrunner assigns like a writer per episode. So it's like, okay, you're going to write this one. You're going to write this one. You're going to write this one. And they write it and bring it back to the showrunner. And the showrunner goes like, well, I have an idea of how all the characters are supposed to be. I'm the one who created the series. So I'm going to just tighten it up and really like bring it together under my vision. So what they do is they change things to be like, would this character say this in this way, or would they say it in this way? They don't change like so super a lot about it, but they do change things to just like bring it together under one kind of roof. Make it sort of resonate with a single voice, even though it kind of is done by many.
Yeah.
And Ano probably did that with his writing staff. I'm guessing.
I think he did a little more.
He's very he very much like admires the way Western film and TV does. I remember reading like an interview with him which talked about like how he wished that not necessarily Western, but live action. Like he wished that anime would operate more in the same way that live action TV would. So I think that he probably took a lot of influence from the way that television is, constructed in Japan over there in the live action scene, and applied some of those principles to like animation production, visually
it's
too.
One of the few anime that has a beginning, middle, and end for each episode. Like every episode has an ending. It's very rare. There'll be loose ends, but it's very rare to have an episode just end on a cliffhanger. And then the next episode even this 2-part premiere, this is a finished story. And the second episode is a finished story, even though they're intertwined.
Yeah, that's kind of unusual in like in a lot of respects, especially for shonen as like a genre. They'll often have like entire fight sequences last multiple episodes. So this is very counter to what the genre typically produces in this era, especially. It's like you had shonen like Yu Yu Hakusho or Dragon Ball, which would have like a character go like, "Is Goku going to survive? Find out in the next episode." Like that. That never really happens in Eva. So
no, it doesn't. There's never like those episodes are almost like an hour and a half of a story, and they've just gone for a half hour, written and animated it, and then gone, oh, we ran out of time, and then they stop, and then they just pick up from where they left off in the next episode.
There are a few examples I can think of which might do that, where it's like episode 17 and 18. That's like with the Toji stuff later, but that has like
that's
cliffhanger.
The only one I can think of. But
yeah, like 17, 18, 19 are kind of cliffhangery, but well, not 19. Things are resolved pretty
19
much.
19 is pretty self-contained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a but there's
like I said, it leaves threads open, but it doesn't. It's a finished story. The threat of Zeruel and the conflict of is Shinji gonna get back in the robot is resolved by the end of the episode.
Yeah, I mean, there are hooks. Like, don't get me wrong, that's like vital for television in general. So, in the case of like in episode 2, if you remember, Shinji sees that eye, and he kind of lets out that piercing scream after seeing it, and then Misato's in the doorway, and she's just like, "You did a good job." Closes the door on him, and that
a lot of quiet night scenes with Masato walking into Shinji's room and whispering things at him.
Yeah. But that's kind of the cliffhanger. It's just like, ooh, what is this? Like, what is the Eva? That's like a big question that the series asks you early on, and it definitely gets you to keep watching in that way. So like in episode 3, there's also the hook with Toji on the phone, and he's like, I'm gonna call Shinji, but then I'm not going to. And that's sort of a like character drama sort of stuff.
This bully character has internal conflict. He's a little deeper than he seems.
Yeah. It's still very much like self-contained, as you're saying, unusually so. Even for live action TV in general, it's a little more like filmic in that way. Yeah, which I appreciate. It's a very unique kind of flavor to end episodes on. In my television writing classes, they were always like, you gotta end on one of 4 things, my dude. You gotta end on peril. The character is like in danger, or they're gonna die, or like a promise of something to come, or like a plot twist. And so there would be like these formulas that they would kind of throw at you in television writing class.
Seems like common sense to me, but okay, you paid a couple of $100,000 for that.
Well, paid a couple $100,000 for a lot of things, but that was like one thing, was just the drilling of the television formulas. So it's and you get to see that a lot, like in a Netflix show. There's this Netflix show called Ozark, and like every episode ends on like one of those 4 things. Westworld is the same deal. A lot of Western television loves to do that whole like formula of we've got to end on some really heavy conflict, and Ava just sidesteps that pretty hard.
Actually, has really Evangelion has really distinctive endings to episodes. It has, in my head, like, you can tell what an Evangelion ending is to an episode with it's almost like a Adult Swim cut, because it's that silent, that completely silent cut to black, dun 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 dun, and then it cuts to the Fly Me to the Moon. It's like, so it's like, I almost think watching a television show could be like going to the symphony, right, where you're listening to the music as much as you're following the story and the characters. And so what are your thoughts on like Shirasagisu and the music he composed for this episode?
I mean, I love Shirasagisu's kind of sound. It's very unique. And he goes for a lot of like orchestration. I'm not a music guy, but I've always really, really loved his tone, and he goes for something like very bombastic, almost like kitsch in some ways. And like when Shinji gets into the Ava unit, and it's just like gonna take off, and it's got this like, maybe some wind chimes or harp or whatever, and the bombastic sort of tone, it almost misleads you into thinking that it's going to be like a typical kind of thing. But he
sounds like Thundercats to me.
Yeah, it's like, this is gonna be your typical kind of action show, dun dun dun, dun, and it turns out to be anything but. And I think there's hints of that as well musically too. Shinji's theme, which is like only in the pilot ever, plays here when he's talking to Gendo, and it's that like da 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 da, like maybe
yeah. All their themes are weird.
And
like Masato's is like
yeah.
That thing, I love that theme too. That's a great one. Like Masato's is like a western, like down. Oh no, that's Asuka's. Sorry, Asuka's is like this western.
Hers is like
yokel hokey. Yeah, which is also so atypical though. Like that was atypical too, but in a different way.
Oh my god. People are gonna just be like, and then I'm so tone deaf. I can't believe.
No, you're not that.
But anyway, it's a very interesting score. It's got a lot of diversity to it. It has a lot of epicness to it. It sometimes goes into that cheese ham territory, but intentionally so. It's amazing. I think it's like one of those iconic things that if it had a lesser soundtrack, might stick less, like the scenes. But
Yes.
it knows when to not use the score too, which is a rare skill. Like you could have had
I think that's what I was kind of talking about before.
yeah,
With the silence at the end of episode. It's very rare that you end an episode with music.
And I think that music is it should be used in the appropriate times, and sometimes silence is better. I remember this scene later on with Asuka and Shinji, and Shinji's gonna move in to kiss her or whatever, and it's just got that like rewinding sound from the cassette tape, and that's like all that you hear, and then it goes like it makes this beep sound effect and then total silence like after that, which is just really nice. Like if they had used music there instead, it probably would have created a completely wrong kind of atmosphere to that. So they do a good job.
Because I'm not familiar with it, I thought it's the crossing sound for the train, the ding 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 ding. I wasn't familiar with that. That's just what a Japanese train sounds like. I thought that was part of the soundtrack for the longest time, but it's not.
It's a sound
but that's
effect,
just how haunting the like sounds of life can be. And I think that's a lot of what Evangelion is about. Just to be really pretentious about it, I think that's what Evangelion is about the like horror of living a regular life, like just how scary things are.
Yeah, there's the cicadas in like episode 4, and
yeah, the cicadas too. Just because a lot of the show is not about facing angels; it's about facing like, oh, I gotta kiss Asuka. she doesn't want me to kiss her. Like, oh, I'm confused. Like that's as much horror for Shinji, maybe more so than fighting a monster is.
Okay. Any other points you want to talk about?
I think that's it. I think this has been a really good podcast. I've had a really good time talking about the show that I've seen a couple of hundred times and that we've talked about for hours and hours and hours ad nauseum. So yeah,
I'm really happy with this as our pilot. So heck yeah.
And we'll probably cover other shows. I don't know if we'll do. I'm thinking maybe we'll do certain episodes of Evangelion. We might not go through every single one. We might focus more on ones we really like, because otherwise it's going to take us like a whole year. But, we like lots of other shows, Text and Lies. Nothing before 2011, but... after 2011.
Yeah, I was gonna say, some of my favorite anime are like Berserk 1998, which would be a good one to cover. Berserk. Love Berserk. That'd be a good one. Monster is cool. Welcome to the NHK. Ping Pong is good. So there's a lot of options.
Hey, that one's after 2011. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
You better watch it.
You're right. Tatami Galaxy is a good pop this in instead. That's from just 2010.
Oh, I love Tatami Galaxy.
So yeah,
we have a cutoff.
Probably we have a cutoff next one we should talk about. I feel in Ava it should either be Asuka Strikes or Ramiel. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Rei 1 and 2.
Oh yeah, that's a good one as well.
That's the Ramiel episode.
Yeah.
That is the.
I was thinking. Wait, is Rei? I thought Rei 2. Wait, now I have to look.
I'm pretty sure Rei 1 and 2 is the Ramiel 2 part.
I thought Rei Beyond the Heart was episode 5, the one where Shinji goes to Rei's apartment.
We know lots about this show, guys. We're authorities, okay?
Yeah. Episode 5 is Rei 1, and then episode 6 is Rei 2.
Episode 6 is Rei 2, and then episode 7 is Asuka Strikes.
Episode 7 is Jet Alone, and then Asuka Strikes is 8. Yeah.
Right. Because they always do everything in triptychs. It's always Rei, Masato, Asuka, Masato, Rei. It's always done in triptychs. Anyway.
Cut that out. I can't make anyone seem like we're unprofessional. Okay.
No, cut everything. Cut the whole podcast. We're too unprofessional in it. But I hope you had a great time listening to our podcast, our pilot. Probably a little rough. We can only get better at it. So.
No, I think it was good. I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, I liked it too. So, thanks for listening. Have yourself a great day.
GoatJesus out.
Hey, thanks for listening to episode 1 of the 2 Gays 1 Episode podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to continue to support our content, please check us out at www.patreon.com/grandrose. That's www.patreon.com/grandrose. GRANDROSE, but all one word. And stay tuned for our next episode, premiering on March 29th at 6 p.m. Two Gays, One Episode is a product of Grand Rose Productions and is hosted by Alex Marcy and Michael Deaver. Produced by Alex Marcy.